Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, February 6th, 2019 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I'm Kate Flavin, Public Information Officer with Sedgwick County. Did you know that February is American Heart Month? Follow Sedgwick County on Facebook and Twitter for tips and information on how to keep your heart healthy. Nominations are open for the 2019 Excellence in Public Service Awards. Anyone can recognize a Sedgwick County, City of Wichita, or USD 259 employee who has demonstrated outstanding work performance or service to the community. The link to nominations are on our Facebook and Twitter pages as well, and those must be submitted by 5 p.m. on Friday, February 22nd. Commissioners, on the agenda, there's a board appointment to the Sedgwick County Solid Waste Management Committee. You'll receive a quarterly financial report. Here a case on property tax relief, and a resolution to establish a moratorium for wind and solar energy zoning applications. Commissioners will also discuss the county manager hiring process and hear a report from the Board of Bids and Contracts. There will be a fire meeting to discuss the fund transfer for the replacement of Fire Station 31 in Andale. And so, Chairman, I'll let you start the meeting.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate it. And I want to welcome everyone that's in the audience, everyone that's joining us on TV and online. I noticed that a number of people in the room are wearing purple this morning. I think that there are also some people that are in mourning today. I think that that's probably why David Spears, our Director of Public Works, isn't with us today. But in case you don't know what I'm talking about, last night, why K.S.A beat KU. So with that beginning, I'd like to call the meeting to order for Wednesday, February 6th, 2019. Madam Clerk, next item.
Invocation to be observed by a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Present.
Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
I have not seen anyone that signed up on public agenda. If anyone is in the audience would like to speak at this time, now is an opportunity. Seeing no one, next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, regular meeting minutes of January 9th, 2019.
Thank you. We have two sets of minutes today. One was from January 9th and one from January 16th. All the commissioners have had a chance to review those. I move that we approve items Alpha and Bravo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Appointments. Item C, resolution reappointing Tony Martinez to the Sedgwick County Solid Waste Management Committee in position number 12.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't see Tony in the room. Okay, but I did see Karen Bailey just come in, so I thought maybe she was here to appoint him. But I appreciate Tony's willingness to serve in this role once again. He's the Public Works Director for Hayesville and has done a fantastic job. So I am proud to make a motion that we reappoint Tony Martinez to the Sedgwick County Solid Waste Management Committee for position number 12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. At this time, I'd like to recess the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners and call a meeting to order of the governing body of Fire District Number 1. First item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Present.
Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
Has anyone in the audience wish to speak on the public agenda today for the Fire District Number 1? Seeing no one, next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, fire meeting minutes of January 9th, 2019.
Commissioners, everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from February the 9th. I move that we approve those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
New business. Item B, request for fund transfer for replacement of Fire Station 31.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Valerie Castor with Project Services. I'm here this morning to discuss the request for fund transfer for the replacement of Fire Station 31. $1.75 million has been assigned to the 2019 Fire District 1 contingency in contemplation of a possible capital project. This project has undergone the regular CIP amendment approval process and was reviewed and approved unanimously by the CIP committee and then approved by the interim county manager. Rusty Leeds, the assistant county manager for public safety, is now going to discuss with you the response area of Fire Station 31 and the current facility conditions at Fire Station 31.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rusty Leeds, Assistant County Manager. This morning, we're going to discuss Fire Station 31. Fire Station 31, located in ANDALE, provides medical, rescue, and fire first response for a 36 square mile area. 31's primary response area covers Sherman Township, including ANDALE proper, and parts of Garden Plain, Eagle, and Union Townships. Built in 1998, the current station has served our basic needs for 20 years. The purpose of this project is to enhance capacity and improve the work environment for crews assigned to Station 31. A contemporary facility, similar to other fire district facilities, will allow greater flexibility and improve truck, apparatus, and equipment storage. Our 24-hour crews will appreciate a better office and living environment. Sleep and restroom accommodations will better support male and female firefighters in a mixed crew. Vented personal equipment storage will reduce crew exposure to carcinogens and extend the useful life of that personal equipment. In the current station, the equipment is stuffed into a locker that is closed to prevent sun rays from getting on it. It doesn't vent, and it's in the bay where the fire truck is, which is a very tight, confined area. So looking at the health and the well-being of our crews, a new facility will help facilitate some of those modern conveniences and amenities. This is a cash-funded project and a new fire station built with both quality and economy in mind, using a similar type construction that we did at Post 15 recently for EMS. Will serve the needs of the fire district, our crews, and the citizens for several decades to come. With that, Ms. Valerie Castor will provide additional project services details on this project, and then we can stand for questions at the end if you'd like.
So this is a typical layout of our 4-bay fire station, which we've been doing more of. It's approximately 10,000 square feet and typically sits on a 2-acre site. For comparison, the current fire station for 31 is now 2,500 square feet. The 4-bay station covers our basic team's needs, such as sleeping quarters, a kitchen and dining area, day room, fitness room, turnout gear storage, which is separated from the apparatus floor, office workspace, a storm shelter, and just additional storage. This slide shows our estimated total project costs, with line items showing our typical first station budget breakdowns. First, we have $1,620,550 as an estimated placeholder for land acquisition, construction of a prefabricated metal building, interior walls, trade installations, finishes, exterior work, permits, etc. Secondly, is the design, necessary drawings to organize the project at $87,109. And then the owner's items, which is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, at $38,618 for a total estimated cost at $1,746,277. There are a lot of contingencies in this next slide, but it does provide a fair overall view of the timeline. We've put in 4 months for land purchase to allow time to explore different site options and allow discussion. 5 months have been allotted for design, 9 for construction, and that puts our move-in date on or around August 2020. And again, this is all completely contingent on how quickly we decide where we're going to build. And the funding source for this project would be a transfer of cash from the Fire District General Fund to the Fire District Special Equipment Fund in the amount of $1,750,000. I will now stand for any questions, and I do recommend for the fund transfer for this capital project.
Thank you. Do we have any questions at all? Commissioner Powell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the presentation, and you did a great job putting this together and meeting with commissioners to help us understand this. I just have a couple of questions. I want to be reminded of a couple of things. Where is the funding for this? Where's it being transferred from? Which budget to, so I guess, CIP? Can you please explain where the money's coming from?
I'm going to transfer that to Rick.
And then while you're talking about the transfer, go ahead and tell me what the balance is there. I'd like to know. Thank you.
Morning, Rick.
Morning, Commissioners. Rick Durham, the Deputy CFO. So to address your question, Commissioner Howell, the transfer is coming from the Fire District General Fund, and then we're transferring that to the Equipment Reserve. Sorry, I was going to say something different, but it's the Equipment Reserve. That's where the transfer goes to. So it's within the Fire District.
So the General Fund is the most has the most uses. You can use it for operations and salaries or whatever else is
That's
needed.
correct.
Is that correct?
So, and then your second question was, you want to know what those
If
fund
you can
balances
remind me,
were.
and if you don't know the answer right now, I'll take it.
So
later.
the budgetary on the budgetary basis, the fund balance as of January 1st of 19 is $7,045,974, and that represents 41% of operating expenses.
And that does not include the question of getting the land in the public works area up to the culvert that's needed and the drain, the sewage line that's needing to have some 1,200 feet added to that. This estimate today does not include that $400,000 or the land acquisition where the station will be placed. In other words, there's another cost. There's another cost, I guess.
Sorry, I'm going to.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Tanya Cole, Director of Facilities. To address your question, the 1.75 includes a budgetary line item for land acquisition. It does not include what we have for some considerations on the ANDALE yard, which includes the approach ramp, the bridge to go over to the ditch there, as well as what it'll cost to add sewer line to that site.
Okay. You might be able to answer this question. If we approve this transfer today, are we approving the concept? Is there any other votes to happen between now and essentially?
Yes, there will be. We will come back to you. We will go out for proposals on design, and so that will come through the Board of Bids and Contracts for design approval, and then construction approval too. We'll go out for bid, and that will come through the Board of Bids and Contracts, and so that will come to you for approval as well.
Okay, and this might be another question for Rick. I don't know, but we haven't seen. I haven't seen lately a projection of the fire district forecast. Do you have that available?
So with any forecasts, it's obviously evolving because there's all kinds of factors, internal and external. They're going to do that, but we're going to talk about that at a workshop in the spring.
Okay.
But right now, none of the forecasts for the fire district show insolvency, if that's where you're going with that. So obviously there are a lot of factors that are going into the fire district right now. But again, we're going to have that at a workshop where we can really delve into that.
Very good. Well, just I guess a stated concern, and I am concerned about the fire district forecast. I know it's been a problem in the past, and we seem to have solved a little bit of that. But that is also the basis for a lot of discussion about consolidation. And we're continuing to have those discussions on the side, and so with that in mind, I am still very concerned about the long-term forecast of the fire district. The reasons for that obviously is the tax base continues to shrink, The costs, of course, to operate the district are continuing to increase in terms of salaries, and the responsibility is not getting smaller. So these are converging lines, and at some point they do converge. Whether we see it in the next 4 or 5 years or will be after that, it is a concern. So I have some concerns about this. However, I believe this is a necessary expenditure today. The compelling reasons that Valerie has already presented, I think, are very compelling. The building there is woefully inadequate. I certainly want to be supportive of doing something new out there that needs to happen. So I want to be supportive of that. So I'll support the motion today if there is one. But I just wanted to say I am concerned that we want to be, I guess, frugal as we move forward. If there's anything we can do to reduce costs, those dollars we transfer out of that general fund could be used for salaries or anything else that's needed in the fire district. So I want to make sure we don't do things that will hurt us down the road and maybe make those lines converge a little bit quicker than we would like. So with that in mind, if there's a motion, I'll be glad to support that this morning. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, this is in my district, and it's something that I've been watching ever since I've been elected. I've been out to this fire station several times and seen the conditions that our firefighters are living in every single day out in that area. In addition, I think in the future you're going to see the requirements grow on what we're going to have to support out of this fire station. What we're looking at now is a project that's going to take us through the next 50 years that's going to support our fire department. And regardless of whether or not we have consolidation or not, the fact is that we're still going to have someone is going to have fire support out there, whether it's a consolidated fire district or whether it remains as fire district number 1. So I am very pleased that we have gone this far. I appreciate the efforts of facilities and public works and our finance folks and our fire department in coming up with this project. And I would like to make a motion that we take the appropriate action and approve the fund transfer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mike Papoon, Interim County Councilor. Our office drafted a resolution which was required by statute. It's also should be in your backup and part of this recommended action. So we'd ask that you approve the fund transfer and adopt the resolution that's in proper form approving such transfer.
Very good. I'll amend my motion to make the fund transfer and adopt the appropriate resolution. And is it a second or?
Second, yes, absolutely.
Very good. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. And with that, thank you all very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. We have nothing else for the Fire District number 1, so I'd like to adjourn Fire District number 1. I'll call back to order the meeting for the Board of County Commissioners for February the 6th, 2019. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
New business, item D, presentation of the quarterly financial report.
Well, welcome back, Rick.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Rick Durham, your Deputy CFO, and I am here this morning to present to you the fourth quarter quarterly financial report. So as you are aware, at the end of each quarter, the Finance Division reports on the financial condition of Sedgwick County. So the following financial report that I'm going to give you provides an analysis of fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018. However, I will say that the information in this is pre-audit information, so it could change at the end of our audit for any adjustments that may be required by the county auditors at a later date. Each of you should have received your quarterly report already. And the first section of that report outlines the financial information on a budgetary basis for applicable fund types, and it has comparisons of activities with the previous fiscal year and the adopted and revised budgets. The second section of the report outlines the status of active capital projects, and then the final section of the report is the fund statements which provide a broad view of the county's finances in a manner similar to a private sector business, and those are based on GAAP standards. So real briefly, I'll talk to you about the difference between GAAP standards and a budgetary basis. And really what the difference is, mainly at a very high level, is when we record expenses. On a budgetary basis, we record the expense or we realize it when we encumber the funds. On a GAAP basis, what we do is we don't realize that until we pay the bill, until we received an invoice and we paid that. So that's the difference when we look at GAAP standards versus budgetary basis, and we'll talk about a little bit of that as I move through the report. But I kind of wanted just to kind of give a general understanding of the difference between GAAP basis and budgetary basis. That's important to my accountants in the room. Everyone else is like, no. Overall, this report shows continued modest improvement in the property tax supported funds as compared to 2017. I bring to light my accounting staff is here, but also this report is put together not by me. I'm just the guy that gets to stand up here and be the, I'm going to say it, the pretty face of the Division of Finance. But the hard work is really done by the budget staff, led by Lorian Showalter Airy, and her staff here is Carly Sanchez, Todd Kawaba, and I don't see Lee here. And then also the accounting department led by Hope Hernandez and her staff of Mandy Estes, Melissa Slaughter, Marty is here, and Brandy Bailey. And I'm going to recognize Brandy in a minute too for some of her outstanding work. So let me get into the report here. We begin with essentially the end, and by that I mean is these are the ending fund balances for these funds as we move through the year. So when we report on financial status for the county, we aggregate that information into one of several possible groupings. It's the general fund, property tax supported funds, other operating funds, or all operating funds. And like I said, this chart shows the ending fund balances at the end of the year for these particular funds. So I'm going to start with the general fund. The general fund is the county's primary operating fund, and that accounts for county services that don't have a designated fund of their own. The general fund includes most general government, law enforcement functions, and it receives the broadest variety of revenues. Currently, the operations of 42 divisions are funded from the general fund. Revenues exceeded expenditures by $1.4 million, and that's primarily due to a transfer of cash into the general fund from the sale of bonds from the Reagan Building, the Greyhound Park land auction, and the net change in fund balance was $1.4 million, and that results in an ending fund balance in the general fund of $68.1 million. And as we move to the right, the next column is debt service funds. Expenditures were $200,000 greater than revenues, and the net change in fund balance there is $238,000, and that results in an ending fund balance of $2.6 million. Moving then, we go into special revenue funds that are property tax supported. And the county has 7 other property tax supported funds, and those are bond and interest, EMS, ComCare, aging, highway, noxious weeds, and Wichita State University. Each fund provides services related to a specific function, and the property taxes levied in each of those funds can only be used to support those specific functions. These funds had a net decrease of approximately $100,000 at year end, and primarily that was a decrease in medical charges collected from the operation of EMS. Now here I should note that we have since outsourced the billing of the EMS billing function, and so we anticipate that we won't see those same results next year. The net change in fund balance of $131,000 resulting in an ending fund balance in those special revenue funds of $3.9 million. The next column, also special revenue funds that are not supported by property tax. The county has 31 budgeted other operating funds which are not supported with property taxes, and those include grant funds, enterprise funds, and internal service funds. These funds decreased by $200,000 also in a combined fund balance, and that's primarily due to an increase in expenditures for technological equipment in the Division of Corrections. So that net change in fund balance results in an ending fund balance of $29.8 million in those non-property tax supported special revenue funds. We move now to the fire district. Again, the fire district number 1 is a distinct governmental entity, and it's operated as part of the Sedgwick County government and levies property taxes, but it's reported financially separately. So the fund balance increased by $800,000 at the end of 2018, and a lot of that is due to changes in their vehicle replacement plan, staff restructuring, and higher than anticipated tax collections. So the net change in fund balance was $836,000, resulting in a fund balance of $6.4 million. So now we have the Enterprise and Internal Service Fund. The fund balances within this group decreased by $2.5 million at the year end, and that's primarily due to projected increases in health insurance premiums, and that results in an ending fund balance in those funds of $28.4 million. So if we roll all those together, we report on total governmental funds. We show an ending fund balance in those of $139 million. So now I'll go into some of the details as we move through the report. So this represents the property tax supported funds of the county on a budgetary basis, and this shows net revenues of $255.4 million. This is an increase of $11.7 million or 4.8 million, or excuse me, 4.8% when compared to 2017. Most significant increases occurred in other revenue of $9 million, current property taxes of $4.2 million, and reimbursements. The increase in other revenue is due to the transfer of debt proceeds from the sale of bonds for the Spirit Aerosystems that's related to Project Eclipse, as well as the transfer of cash into the general fund from the sale of bonds from the Reagan building. The increase in reimbursements is largely due to claim recovery payment from an insurance loss, or the insurance reimbursement from a loss that we had. And then license and permits increase is due to an increase in plans being reviewed, some of which are very large projects, and then that increases the fees that we are collected. This shows the expenditures of county property tax supported funds. And for all county property tax supported funds, the expenditures increased $11.1 million or 4.5%, and that totaled $254.3 as depicted on this chart. Increases were recorded in contractuals, personnel, and the contractual increase is largely due to the economic development insight. It's the $7 million of the Project Eclipse. So we show the revenue as we have the income from the sale of the bonds, and then the expenditure is in the contractual for that agreement. And that was an agreement with the City of Wichita Spirit for Project Eclipse. There were also increases in professional services, legal professional services for the district court and external counsel for the counselor's office. There was an increase in out-of-county housing for sheriff, and the increase in personnel cost is mostly attributed to budgeted increase for compensation and benefits. So as we take those two into account, you'll see there's the 4.8% increase in revenue and a 4.5% increase in expenditures, and that results in a net income for the year of $1 million. So we'll drill down a little further into those county property tax supported funds. And here we show the top 10 revenues of property tax supported funds. And as you can see, the largest is current property tax collections, and that increased just over $4 million when you compare that to 2017. And a reminder, the county's assessed value grew 3.2% for the 2018 budget year. Retail sales and use tax collections increased $1.4 million when compared to 2017, and collections in 11 of 12 months in 2018 exceeded collections in those same months in 2017. And there's actually a chart in your in the quarterly report that has that broken down month by month. The next thing I would like to draw your attention to is officer fees toward the nearly the bottom of that chart. Officer fees increased 17% as compared to 2017. And what officer fees are those per page filing fees for documents that are recorded in the Register of Deeds office. And I bring that to your attention because as of 1 January 2019, we no longer charge mortgage registration fees, so that revenue is gone in 2019. You don't see that. So the officer fees, while it doesn't replace all of that revenue, it's meant to offset and be that revenue stream. So I bring that to your attention, that's why that 17.9% increase. And then, of course, there's a 24% decrease in Medicare fee revenue, and that's tied to the lower EMS collections that I discussed earlier. So as we move now, we look at some of the expenditures in the property tax supported funds. And this is key personnel expenditures. Personnel is the largest single category of expense that we incur here at the county. Some of the changes of note, you'll see pension contributions increased 9.1%, and those are due to K.S.A changes. And again, there's a chart in the quarterly report that shows those changes for K.S.A and KP&F for the past 6 fiscal years, so you can see those changes as over the time. And then we'll see overtime increase 16.2%, and that largely is due to overtime cost in sheriff, corrections, and EMS. And then you can see all other personnel expenditures have decreased 6%, and other personnel expenditures include things like allowances, vacation sellers' wages, work comp premiums, unemployment taxes, and things of that nature. Sticking with expenditures in those property tax supported funds, listed here are some of the additional non-personnel expenditures. Draw your attention to some of the red numbers on the page. Obviously, fleet management charges down $1.2 million or 18%, and that is due to the refunding of fleet management charges to EMS. So we to prevent a deficit in that fund, in that EMS fund, so we refunded their fleet management charges for the year. Interest on debt down 10%. That's due to no issuances of debt in 2017, so there was no interest payments due in 2018. However, recall we did issue bonds in 2018 for the Reagan Building, for the Economic Development Program, and some road and bridge projects and improvements. And then the bottom line there, the software and hardware maintenance, a 14.6% increase. While not a very large dollar amount, that's due to voting equipment maintenance costs for the new voting equipment. So now we shift gears a little bit and we look at those special revenue funds that are not supported by tax dollars. So these are non-tax special revenue funds. And as I stated at the beginning of this presentation, the county has 31 operating funds which are not supported directly with property taxes. So in these, revenues have increased $2.7 million as compared to 2017. The most significant increases occurred in intergovernmental revenue, and that's primarily due to an increase in state revenue that was received by ComCare, as their participating community mental health center contract was increased by $1.5 million for state fiscal year 2018. ComCare also received an amendment for additional $1.3 million for the community crisis center, and additionally there were increases in federal revenue in the health division. Here we look at expenditures. Those expenditures increased $1.9 million as compared to 2017. So when we look year over year, we see there's a 3.9% increase in revenues and a 2.7% increase in expenditures. And like we did with the tax-supported funds, we'll now look at the revenues, and we'll drill down a little bit into some of those top 10 revenues for the non-tax special revenue funds. Obviously, you're probably drawn to the large percentage increase in the state revenue from KDADs. It's 172%. As I briefed the commission at the end of the second quarter and the end of the third quarter, that large increase percentage-wise is the way we put it in our accounting system. That revenue is still, that revenue used to be reported under state revenue DCF, and you see that on the next line. There's a 43% decrease there. So it's due to how the revenue is recorded in the accounting system, so it's not truly a 172% increase in revenue coming in. It's pretty much net neutral. Other key numbers on this page that may stand out is the red numbers at the very bottom of the page. You see the reduction in state revenue, JJA. That's as a result of the skip closing. The miscellaneous federal revenue, that's due to the elimination of the HUD voucher program. And then Medicaid waiver, the reduce of 12.6%. That's due to a timing of billing in 2018 as compared to 2017. So that's just it's an accounting thing, it's a timing thing. So we'll see that level out as we move into 2019. At least I would anticipate that. We look at expenditures now, and again, the largest expenditure is people. So you can see there are actually several entries on this chart that are directly tied to personnel expenditures. Salaries and wages, obviously, is one. The next one is employee insurance premiums, also a personnel cost. Then we move down, we see pension contributions increase 9.5%. Also a personnel cost. So you can see some of the key expenditures that we're tracking are all tied to people. And then other things you see there are relatively small changes. So overall, the key expenditures in those non-tax special revenue funds increased 2.7% for the year. Okay, up to now we were talking about numbers on a budgetary basis. So we're going to shift gears a little bit now, and we move into the next section of the quarterly report that would be found behind the tab in the report called Fund Statements. And there you're going to find balance sheets and income statements and all of those accounting reports. These figures are on a GAAP basis that I'm showing you, and what this chart shows you is the total fund balance on a GAAP basis of the general fund. And at the end of 2018, the general fund balance shows $67 million. So as you can see, as we look over the past 6 fiscal years from 13 through 18, there's a clear pattern that you can see. And that pattern is the tax collection cycle. We collect tax dollars in the first and second quarter, and then we spend those down in the third and fourth quarter. So you can see there's really a clear cycle as we move through each fiscal year, and fairly consistent numbers, and 2018 ends at $67 million of fund balance, which isn't necessarily out of line with any of the previous fiscal years. This is the same data but shown differently. And what this chart shows is the general fund balance as a percentage of budgeted expenditures. So it's important at this point that I tell you the county has a fund balance policy that states that unrestricted general fund balance be at least 20% of budgeted expenditures. And that policy line is depicted along the line on that 20% line. So you can see where that policy is, that 20% line. Again, we see the clear pattern of collections and then spending down through the third and fourth quarters. So at the end of 2018, the unrestricted general fund balance as a percentage of budget expenditures is 32%. And again, not out of line with any of the five previous fiscal years, so you can see a 6-year trend there. Okay, we'll shift gears again, and now we'll look at the investment portfolio. So this chart represents the investment portfolio of Sedgwick County, and it measures two things. It measures the size of the investment portfolio and the performance. So the size of the portfolio is depicted in the brown bars that you see. And again, you can see that clear pattern as we look back. And so December, there's a spike in December of every year. Again, that's tax collection cycle. So we have a very large amount of money in our portfolio to invest then. So that represents the size of it. And currently, the end of 2018, the total portfolio sits at $528.6 million that we invest. So the yield of the portfolio, then, that's the performance piece. So there are two lines depicted there. The county's yield is that blue line, and then the benchmark is that dashed gray or green line. And the benchmark that we measure against is the 1-year federal treasury bill, the T-bill. So currently, that is you can see over 2.5%. It's 2.8, I believe, is what it is. So the county's yield is behind that, and it's at 2.41%. That's up from 2.24 for the third quarter of 18, but what I would truly like to draw your attention to is where we were last year at this time. So if you look at December of 17 in the county, we were at 1.01%. So you can see there's a spike in March, it was flat in June, and then a tremendous spike in September. And and I told you I was going to draw attention to Brandy. I was going to call her out again. But Brandy Bailey manages our investment portfolio, and what she did an analysis. And when the Fed started raising the rate, and you can see that happening through 18, when the Fed started raising the rate, we have investments that are locked in for 2 and 3 years at the old rate. So she did the analysis, looked at what would happen if we rolled those over early, took the penalty, and what would the payback be? And the result is what you see here is that the payback period was less than a year. In some cases, some of these things were locked in for 2 and 3 years. So you can see that we've essentially nearly caught up in a year to what the benchmark rate is. So I just wanted to say, great job, Brandy. So, okay, we're going to shift gears one more time. Well, probably not one more, a couple more. So we're going to look at the other part of the quarterly report is those capital projects. So typically I show the status of active capital projects, but since we were at the end of the fiscal year, I thought maybe I would do a little wrap up and show some of the significant projects that were completed during 2018. And we just kind of randomly pulled some out to show you. So we start with the jail annex. This project took approximately 7 months to complete. The existing work release building at 701 West Harry was converted to a detention grade facility that houses 180 inmates. This included removing and replacing corroded piping for all the pod restrooms, installing detention grade doors, lights, plumbing fixtures, and furniture. And additional security features were also added to the doors, yards, and windows. The next project is a new EMS post, or post 15. This project took 7 months approximately to complete, and this is a new nearly 3,000 square foot pre-engineered steel structure with 2 drive-through bays that accommodate 4 vehicles and 4 full-time staff on the inside. The next one is the Murdoch Tag Office remodel. This project took approximately 5 months to complete, and it transformed a vacated tag office into a simulation training space for EMS that has offices, conference space, a video recording room, and a break room. And then we repaired EMS Post 8. That project took approximately 3 months to complete. That consisted of exterior and interior work, including a new roof, window repairs, painting, and correcting drainage. The interior remodel was done to service and deploy EMS apparatuses and house a 4-person crew. And then you see there are 3 bridge projects there listed. The first was 95th Street South. This project was completed in March of 2018. It involved replacement of the bridge. The bridge was constructed to meet modern safety standards, generally longer to address flooding issues, as well as wider to address traffic issues. And this has 924 vehicles per day go across it. The next one, 295th Street West. I would say it's the same, addressed all of those things. It's longer, addressed flooding issues, and that bridge has 420 vehicles per day on it. And the last one, I would say same, has 968 vehicles per day on it. And of course, this is just a snapshot of a few of the projects that were complete. There were many more routine things like roof repairs and parking lot repairs and roads and things. And I know David Spears shows you his road and bridge show, so you see all of those completed projects. Good plug in there for you, Jim. So we change now from looking at the performance of the county's finances to some of the outside factors that impact some of the decisions that we make. And this information comes from the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State. And this is the leading economic indicators through October of 18. November and December's data is not out on their website yet. So what this depicts is, I show you every quarter, is that slow, steady recovery that was discussed yesterday by Project Wichita. So it's kind of shows you that snapshot, that slow recovery that may not be as steep of a recovery as some of the other areas that we regionally around here. So I'm going to look at some of the short-term trends for the economy. And what this chart shows, so I feel like I need to, this compares the fourth quarter of 2018 to the fourth quarter of 2017. So we look at home sales, obviously has decreased in the fourth quarter of 18. The number of mortgages registered is down. Sales and use tax is up, as I discussed earlier. The total number of employed is up 1.72%, and the total unemployed is a decrease of 5.19%, but that's a positive trend. So unemployment is down, which is a positive trend. I know, you see the negative number and the arrow up, and people are like, what are you? Okay, it's correct. So this shows some long-term trends in the economy. As you can see, and this is annualized data through the end of 2017. And as we complete the audit and the CAFR is done and we start getting annualized data, we'll put a 2018 column on there, and you'll see that. But you can see through, for the numbers for 2017, tax-based growth was up, home sales was up, new home permits was up, the number of mortgage registered were down, sales tax up, and the unemployment rate down. So the next 4 slides are slides that Commissioners Dennis, O'Donnell, and Howell have seen in the past, but so for Commissioner Cruz and Commissioner Meitzner, I wanted to bring this in and refresh each of you. This shows key metrics that we measure in Sedgwick County and our trends over the past 3 years. Again, annualized data. So we look at liquidity, and that's the number of days cash we have in the general fund. As you can see, it's a trends up a little bit, but it's fairly consistent over those 3 fiscal years. Then we look at flexibility, and again, that's the unrestricted balance as a percentage of expenditures. And we look at property values because that's where our revenue comes from ad valorem taxes. We look at debt, and that's direct debt per capita, and you can see that is going down. We look at debt burden service as a percentage of general fund revenues, again, a downward trend. We look at effective property tax rate, and we look at our reliance here at the county on the property tax. So what I've done is I've taken these numbers then, and then we compare those exact same measures with Johnson County, Wyandotte County, Tulsa County in Oklahoma, and Douglas County in Nebraska. So you can see the comparisons as we move down that our liquidity is obviously not as maybe good as Johnson County, but better than Wyandotte or Tulsa County, Oklahoma, and then maybe relatively close to Douglas County, Nebraska. And then you move down and you can use those and see the comparative measures as you move down through flexibility, property values, our debt burden, and then the property tax reliance and rates. So as we move to the next slide then, and I know that you all want to study that, this shows the same measures, and we compare to the city of Wichita, the city of Tulsa, and then Oklahoma City with the same measures. So you can see we look at it on a regional basis as a county, and then as we compare ourselves to the city, so we can see where we are based on these measures. So with that, I would move on and I would start to wrap up this presentation. Here are some of the things that we see as impacts from the external environment. Obviously, our federal government, there's threats of more shutdowns, which could impact grant funding and perhaps highway funds. But then again, these are unknowns. Our state government, we have a new administration. So there may not be threats coming from that, but how about opportunities? We don't know what school funding is going to look like, and there's a possibility of Medicaid expansion. So we see maybe opportunities coming from that. And of course, the local economy has, you got your briefing yesterday from Project Wichita, you saw some of that, when we talk about the lack of a skilled labor pool. Some of the key points I want you to take away from this is our revenues outpaced expenditures in property tax supported funds slightly. There was a general fund surplus in 2018. Non-tax supported funds revenues were 1.2% more than expenditures. And again, overall, the report illustrates continued modest improvement for property tax supported funds. The financial performance was consistent with what we expected. Our fundamentals continue to reflect strong financial position. And as we went through 2018, the focus was to address core government function. And here are just two key numbers to show that we addressed those government functions. Was $4.9 million increase in budgeted expenditures in those core functions, and an addition of 20.05 FTEs were added to support those core functions. And with that, I would attempt to answer any questions you may have. And if there are no questions, I would ask that you would receive and file the report.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have any questions for Rick's presentation? Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always have questions, but first I want to say thank you. Excellent job once again. You and your staff that works with you do a tremendous job. It's a great presentation, and I think it just shows that Sedgwick County's doing a pretty good job overall, and I really appreciate that. I had one question on, you said something, and I kind of missed what you said. I wanted to ask you for clarification, if you don't mind, on here it is, on page 13. Your federal revenue miscellaneous went down 25.2%. Can you describe that again? What was the cause of that?
If I can find it in my notes, yes, sir.
Okay.
The elimination of the HUD voucher program.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. And then that helps me very much. I had one other question on slide 17. Do we have those rates? Those are quarterly rates shown on the slide. Do we have those rates in annualized format by chance?
Yeah, we can get those.
That'd be great. I'd just like to get that later on.
You bet.
Be wonderful. And then that final slide that you talked about, the 20 FTEs and the 4.9 million increase on the very last statement. That's a summary for 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Chairman. Rick, thanks for the presentation. It's good for the two of us that are new to. Thanks for walking us through it.
Yes, sir.
Kind of familiar a little bit with some of it based on previous stuff, but just out of curiosity more than anything, on your slide 24 on the metrics compared to other cities. Obviously, the city of Wichita, 2,823 jumps out. I'm going to make an assumption because I don't know this off the top of my head, but so the city, this is related to debt, right?
Yes.
So the city does all of the water. So does this include the water debt?
All the debt.
And the airport debt?
Yes. Yes.
And the special assessments?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. All of that, all those numbers are pulled off of their CAFR.
Right.
And that's where
Okay.
that's where all of the numbers are pulled off from. So yes, it includes all the debt.
So just to
Yes, sir.
Just to restate, I mean, most of you know, but the water debt is paid by the water users. Airport debt is paid by the airport users, and special assessments on homes are obviously paid by if you're buying a home and agree to pay the special. So I know the city's always struggled with some of those, but because it inflates the total debt indebtedness. I don't know if there's a breakdown that's necessary, but it's just
Okay.
something to point out that might be their true debt versus, and I don't know if Oklahoma City and Tulsa have those kind of things in there as well, but it's good. It's good information. I got a few other questions, but I think I'll do those one-on-one. Okay?
Yes,
So
sir.
just know, or maybe with Commissioner Cruz, she might want to join us sometime in the future on that.
You bet.
Okay, thanks.
I don't see any other questions, Rick. I do appreciate the briefing. I appreciate everything that the entire staff does up in our finance department. It is a lot of information, and it doesn't matter if you're a new commissioner or not, there's still a lot of information to take. The descriptions really, I think, show that we're doing what we need to do for the public. When you look at some of the major expenditures that we've had on building some of the EMS posts and all of the major capital improvement programs and all of the different things that we do, day in and day out to support the public. That's exactly what our job is. So I appreciate you pointing out what we have been able to accomplish in the past, and we look forward to doing similar things in the future. I appreciate it. I would like to make a motion that we receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Next item, please.
Item E, consideration of a request for property tax relief pursuant to K.S.A. 79-1613.
Warren Justin.
Morning, Commissioners. Justin Wagoner, Assistant County Counselor. And that's actually, the slideshow is actually for the next item I'm going to present. My apologies on that. But what's in front of you on this particular item is a property owner's requested property tax relief due to fire damage that occurred on a property. And before I get into the specifics of that particular property and the application, I wanted to briefly go through K.S.A. 79-1613. Pursuant to that statute, if a homestead is destroyed or substantially destroyed as a result of a flood, fire, earthquake, tornado, storm, or other event declared a disaster by the governor, the owner of the homestead can apply for property tax relief through an abatement or a tax credit. The Board of County Commissioners under that statute is tasked with inquiring into and making findings on three different items. First, whether the structure was a homestead. Second, whether the homestead was destroyed or substantially destroyed. And then third, the assessed value of the property. In order for a property to be qualified as destroyed or substantially destroyed, the statute requires the cost of the cost to restore the structure to its before damage condition would have to be greater than or equal to 50% of the market value of the structure prior to the damage. In 2014, the Board of County Commissioners adopted a resolution that established operating procedures for county staff when these items come up. And to summarize, the county clerk's office is tasked with receiving the applications, and they also process them, prepare them for the agenda. The county appraiser's office, their role is to evaluate the property damage that occurs on these. Typically, that's through one of the tools they use is an on-site inspection of the property to visually see the damage and make an estimate as to how much it would cost to repair it. And they also would review any paperwork that property owner may submit. This particular application that's in front of you today is for a structure at 1430 North Broadway in the city of Wichita. It's in District 4, and it suffered fire damage on July 5th of 2015. The owner of record of that property is Guadalupe Martinez, and she filed her application for property tax relief with the county clerk's office on November 1st of 2018. With regard to the three findings, I'm going to present each of them. First, I'll give the staff recommendation and then some relevant information for each one of those as well. The first question is whether this was a homestead. County staff has recommended that the Board of County Commissioners make a finding that this was not a homestead. The property is zoned limited commercial. Ms. Martinez's application describes this as a commercial building / property. During a discussion with county staff, Ms. Martinez was asked if the property had been utilized as a residence, and she said that it had not. Some of the paperwork and the backup materials, as well as the county appraiser's records for this property, also indicate that it's been used for commercial purposes and not as a residence. The state statute's definition of a homestead describes that as a dwelling occupied as a residence. With regard to the second finding, and the statute does require you to make additional findings, even if you did follow staff recommendation on that. But the second item is whether the structure was destroyed or substantially destroyed. The county staff recommendation, included in the order that's in front of you today, provides that there's not adequate evidence to establish that the property was destroyed or substantially destroyed. And to explain that a bit, there's some complicating factors. First, it's worth noting that in this case, the damage occurred more than 3 years before the application was filed. And usually the application's filed a number of weeks or months after the damage occurs. And the reason that that's a little atypical and where it complicates things is that the county appraiser's office was not able to look at the property and evaluate the damage in person on this because they didn't have any reason to, because there was no application filed at that time. By the time that the application had been filed, the property owner had already pulled a building permit and had the damage repaired. While there is no time limit under the statute for when these can be applied for, but I just mentioned that to explain how it made things a little more challenging for the county appraiser's office. The second complicating factor is that some of the information that county staff has received on this is contradictory. not to say that can happen, but the structure is appraised at approximately $110,000. The Wichita Fire Department report, which was included in the backup materials, indicated a total loss of $100,000. They estimated the structure at $100,000 on that report as well. And that report that's in the backup materials does have some pictures of the fire damage that was suffered. However, the building permit that was pulled for the property for fire repair, roof structure, electrical, and mechanical work indicated the cost of the work would be $25,000, which would be roughly a quarter of the property's value. After the building permit was pulled in October 2015, the appraiser's office completed what's referred to as a desktop review and a windshield review of the exterior of the structure. Didn't actually go inside the property. They were unable to see any structural damage on the exterior of the property. Also in the backup materials, Ms. Martinez had submitted for your consideration some insurance paperwork, which demonstrates the insurance company may have paid out a net claim as high as $141,000. I'm not certain as to what exactly was paid out, but that could potentially serve as justification to support a finding that the structure was destroyed or substantially destroyed. Ultimately, it is up to you as the Board of County Commissioners to make that finding, and staff, of course, has made a recommendation. There's not enough evidence to make a clear finding that it was destroyed or substantially destroyed. And Interim County Appraiser Mark Clark is here if you have any questions regarding the review of the damage to the structure. And then lastly, the third finding is regarding the assessed valuation. That one's pretty easy. In 2015, the assessed valuation was $2,930.22. So the staff recommendation on this is to approve an order denying the requested property tax relief and to authorize the chairman to sign. The primary basis is that this is not a homestead as it's defined under the statute. The secondary basis is that there's not enough evidence to establish the structure was destroyed or substantially destroyed. In conclusion, I want to point out a few other things. First, if the property does meet all the statutory requirements that I mentioned, that still doesn't mean you have to grant them the property owner tax relief. That determination is discretionary, and the statute mentions the budgetary constraints the various taxing subdivisions may have, so you can take that into account if you wish to. Also, while this is not a public hearing by statute, I would suggest that you allow the property owner, their agent, or any other interested parties to provide comments and evidence if they wish to do so. And then lastly, you can take action by a simple majority vote. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Justin. First of all, thank you very much for that in-depth analysis of this issue. I know that you and Karen Bailey have been by and talked to each one of the commissioners also individually so that we have a thorough knowledge of this. Also, we have a couple commissioners that are seated with us today that were instrumental in getting the bill passed that we're discussing today. So they have a very intimate knowledge of exactly what the issues are involved. So first of all, I need to find out if any of the commissioners have any questions that haven't been addressed to this point. We'll then open it up to see if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this issue. Then I'll bring it back for a decision from the board. So are there any questions from the commission? Seeing no questions from the commission, I'd like to open it up to the public. Is anyone in the audience today that would like to speak on this issue? Seeing no one in the audience, I'll bring it back to the bench. Commissioners, Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned already, I'm very familiar with this law because I was involved in writing the law to begin with, and Senator Michael O'Donnell at the time was very supportive of it, and it was with his help we got this put into as a proviso into the budget bill of 2013, and then it was made permanent law the following year with changes. Those changes in 2014, I don't know that I agree with them, but the initial intent of this was based on some things that have happened across the state with flooding and tornadoes and that type of thing. But what really got the conversation moving forward was a tornado that happened in the Oaklawn community in 2012, and there was I don't know the exact number, but let's just say there was 100 homes or so that were essentially destroyed and not livable. And it just seemed like when a community, let's say Greensburg, for example, is wiped out, that the community has very little ability to help themselves because it's a very broad, expansive community event. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that property taxes are paid in arrears. In other words, you live in the property and you pay them for the time you've already lived there. it just seemed especially cruel to ask someone in that situation to pay a property tax bill for a home that doesn't exist, that they can't live in. So that was the basis for this law. It took a number of years. Senator Mike Peterson worked on this, a senator for the area as well. I was elected to credit him. I think the law was well-intentioned, but it's taken a turn for the worse. I think we need to clean this up. I would like to see this put this on our legislative platform to do some review of this law. It is no longer serving the intended purpose that it started out with. I think it was well-intentioned, but it's turned out to be something that wasn't what we intended. So to the extent this is not a homestead, in my opinion, I don't think we have much of a decision. My opinion is because for this to be qualified for an abatement, it must be a homestead, and it's not a homestead. To me, that's the most compelling evidence that's been presented this morning. So if I understand that incorrectly, please correct me. But
I think your understanding is correct.
Okay, so in my opinion, the way the law is written, this is only available for a homestead. In fact, I would say this would be unfair to other taxpayers if we were to provide this abatement, knowing that it's not qualified as a homestead. We really don't have a legal basis to make an abatement. I don't know. We can't just abate property because we feel like it. We must have legal authority to do so, and this is not a qualified application on that one thing alone. And you made a number of other points I think are all valid, but the way this law, just to summarize, the way this law is being used right now is being used on an individual basis without a declaration of a governor of a community disaster. And to me, that was the compelling thing in the original law, and that's no longer required. This is being done on an individual basis, even when insurance proceeds are available. So someone may actually have the ability to take care of their own issue. It's not a community-wide problem, and so this is really the law has just taken an entirely different direction than what was originally intended. But the bottom line is this is not a homestead, and so I don't think we have a legal right to do this. And so, Mr. Chairman, unless there's anybody else who wants to make a motion, I would make a motion. We would approve an order denying the requested property tax relief and authorize the chairman to sign.
Thank you. In order to have discussion, but we'll need a let me have Commissioner Cruz speak first, and then we'll finish up with the motion. Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have to kind of reiterate what Commissioner Howe said. You know, I'm not a lawyer, so these laws are sort of complicated and hard to understand, but I appreciate the briefing that I had over this. So the law, as I understand it, and was explained today and was explained to me over the course of my conversation with our legal team, only applies to homesteads. And so while I am empathetic to this situation, I just can't support this and would have to deny this request simply on the basis of I have to follow the law.
Thank you. We have a motion, and I would second that motion. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Item F, resolution to establish a moratorium for wind and solar energy zoning applications.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Justin Wagner, Assistant County Counselor. This particular item is in front of you today. I'll just kind of give you a quick background as to how it got here. On January 22nd, you had a Board of County Commissioners staff meeting where during that meeting, wind and solar energy uses were discussed with a number of various staff members came up and gave a presentation on that. And the consensus that was developed out of that meeting was to recommend Planning Department staff to look at developing potential standards for consideration for the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission or perhaps any subcommittee of the MAPC, and having those potentially placed into the zoning code. And those would be specific to solar and wind uses. And that process would likely take a handful of months. I mean, that doesn't just happen in a couple of weeks. That usually takes a few months for any code change in the zoning code, because there's a process that has to go again with the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, then ultimately to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption. And this is also a very complicated issue. So it's worth noting that today, as far as I know, there are no pending wind or solar applications that the Metropolitan Area Planning Department has received. However, in the interim time between now and the potential adoption of any standards, it's possible that an application could come in And the thought would be that a moratorium could be put in place so that you could have those standards adopted potentially before any of these applications would come forward. And so after that Board of County Commissioners staff meeting on January 22nd, on the heels of that, the county manager suggested that we bring a moratorium item in front of you for your consideration. And so that's the resolution that's in the backup materials. Talking in a little bit of detail, I'm an attorney, so I have to talk about the law and legal authority and that kind of stuff. But the moratorium, what's it mean? Well, it's a temporary prohibition on an activity, and moratoria have been utilized and upheld by United States Supreme Court decisions as well as decisions from the Kansas Supreme Court. Essentially, it's a valid planning tool that you may have where you would, as a governing body, you may want to come up with some conditions and standards you want to put in place on these types of items. And while those are being reviewed and studied, the moratoria could be adopted. And whether to do so is discretionary for the 5 of you today. The action is not required. So there's no requirement that you have to do it. It's ultimately your call. The next slide here is, I think it's important to know, what if you did not adopt a moratorium? What would happen? Well, what would happen if somebody came in today before this moratorium would be effective is if they filed an application for conditional use for utility major that would be applied for at the planning department. Planning department staff would make a recommendation on the item. They do their review like they do any zoning item and make a recommendation for the item before it would go to the Metropolitan Planning Commission. And before that public hearing in front of the MAPC, there would be notice given to the neighbors who all live within 1,000 feet of the area that would be subject to the zone change, or the conditional use, I should say. And the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission would review the item, hold the public hearing, and then ultimately make a recommendation as to what should occur, whether to approve or deny the item. And if they did approve the conditional use, they could impose reasonable conditions. Then from there, the matter may very well end up going to the Board of County Commissioners for review. There might be a protest, there might not, but ultimately the final decision would be up to the governing body typically in those situations. And again, the Board of County Commissioners could approve, deny, and they could also impose conditions as a part of any approval. And really the difference between that and having standards in place is that conditions would be fashioned on a case-by-case basis as that zoning case is being heard, as opposed to being developed and adopted prior to the application coming in. And I would welcome, Dale Miller is here, the planning director, in case you have any questions on that process, because he knows it better than I do. So. I want to go over a few of the details of the moratorium that's on your agenda. Would prohibit the acceptance and processing of an application for commercial wind or solar energy systems during the term of the moratorium, which would be for 180 days from anticipated publication if it were to be adopted. This would not impact your smaller scale solar and wind uses. For example, if somebody had a solar panel on their house they use for their own personal usage, it would only apply to, again, the bigger, larger scale commercial uses. This moratorium could be extended, amended, or terminated prior to that August 12th date as well, and that would ultimately be by any resolution by the Board of County Commissioners. This map here, you can see the arrow on the mouse. I'm going to try to orient you. This is U.S. Highway 54 West. This is Cheney, and you can see down here in the bottom right, this is kind of a cutout of a portion of District 3, the Chairman's District, and this would be Garden Plain right here, and the yellow color indicates leases that are already existing on parcels for wind projects. Doesn't mean that the wind projects are in place, it just means the leases are in place. The blue cross-hatching is for solar that's in place. There's this one particular area right here that's both wind and solar, actually. And then the red indicates transmission line for easements for electrical utilities to come through. And so as you can see, again, this doesn't show that any of this stuff is actually going on today, but there are leases in place, and that's an indicator that there may well be some applications in the future on this. And ultimately, this item, I think there are really 3 options for you to consider. You could approve the resolution that's in your materials today to impose the moratorium. You could elect not to impose the moratorium, or you could approve a modified version of that resolution as you would see fit. And the recommended action on this is neutrally worded, to take action deemed appropriate by the Board of County Commissioners, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thanks, Justin. Before we have any questions, a couple things I'd like to say about what this moratorium is. First of all, it is not a position for or against any kind of alternate energy. We are not taking any action on trying to say that we approve or disapprove of alternate forms of energy. What started with, I was invited by a number of folks to go over to Reno County because there is a wind farm going in near the Sedgwick County border. And so I listened to the public and the commissioners in Reno County and came back with more questions than I had answers to. I spent 9 years before I came on this commission as a member of the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. And when a project would come before the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, we had a set of rules that said that if it's this type of project, these are the things that must happen. There has to be certain setbacks. There has to be certain screening. Sometimes it requires paved roads. Unfortunately, we don't have a set of rules right now for any kind of alternate energy projects. And that's really what this moratorium is designed to do, to give us the chance of looking at what the impact is going to be on Sedgwick County specifically if one of these projects were going to happen. The other thing, as you saw from this one slide, when I came back, I asked our Register of Deeds and our county appraiser to take a look to see if there was a possibility that anyone was even considering any type of alternate energy in Sedgwick County, because I didn't even know that information. And what I learned, and you saw on the slide, was that there are already leases out there for this type of situation. These leases mean that if someone decided that they wanted to put in some type of alternate energy program, that they would go up and file the necessary paperwork, and at that point we wouldn't have any rules and regulations to decide what to do. The other thing is we kept researching it, and I asked the staff to take a look at it. This has a lot of impact on Sedgwick County. First of all, maybe our fire department is going to have to be trained on how to do a rescue from one of these large windmills. Our EMS may have to be involved in it. It's going to impact public works because we're going to have large pieces of equipment moving over our roads and our bridges in the country. What I also learned is that it could have some health impacts, so our health department and our environmental department needs to get involved in it to take a look because there's something called flicker that I learned about that I'd never heard of before, but it can cause people with certain types of epilepsy to have seizures based on the sun turning on and off as the windmills go around. There is noise that comes off of these windmills, and we need to know what the tolerable level is to the public. And I heard rumors, and I can't substantiate it, but that it even at a quarter of a mile away, the noise of this is still around 50 decibels, which is like having a refrigerator run all night in your bedroom. So is this satisfactory or not? I don't know. The other thing is if we put some type of a standard on that says so many decibels, who is responsible for measuring that? How do we get that information back to whoever's operating it, and what action can they take? So our building construction department's involved in it. These properties will be assessed, so our assessor is involved in it. It will go through the regular planning process, so our Metropolitan Area Planning Department will be involved in it. So almost every department in Sedgwick County is involved one way or the other in it, and we just don't know the answers right now. So again, all we're asking for in this moratorium is a 6-month just pause so that we can assess what we need, what kind of screening, what kind of setbacks, all the different rules and regulations you would normally have on a zoning application, and at that time all of our experts will come up with a solution. So that's kind of an explanation from my point of view. Obviously, I'm fairly involved in it because all these are in District 3, the district that I represent. So I am not an expert by any means, but I've been looking into it in great detail, and I want to make sure that we do what's right for Sedgwick County. Sedgwick County is a little bit different. I own land way out in western Kansas. You can go miles and not see a house. I would love to have a windmill on my property out west because it pays pretty good. But in Sedgwick County, we're more of an urban county. You can't throw a rock without hitting a house somewhere in Sedgwick County. So it has a little bit of a different impact in a, even though if you look at western Sedgwick County, it looks pretty rural, it is not as rural as some counties out west. So all we're looking for is to take a look at this, give us a pause so that we can take a look at it. So that's my explanation. What I would like to do at this point is to see if anyone in the audience would like to speak on this issue and give them an opportunity, and then I'll bring it back to the bench. So is there anyone in the audience today that would like to speak on this issue? Seeing no one, I'd like to bring it back to the bench. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to just say that I'm excited that we are starting this discussion. I think it's a good way to open up that Sedgwick County is paying attention to the future of renewable energy, and I think that this is a good thing. I think that this is going to allow us time to study the effects, both negative and positive, on our environment, and I'm just excited at the fact that we're doing this. So good job, Sedgwick County, today.
Thank you. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you pointed out a lot of questions that are to be answered. So, Dale, I'm not asking you to address because you just don't know the breadth of what we have to try to analyze. I assume that we're going to do. There's already wind farms and solar farms around the country, so I assume that you're going to be able to locate some good data there. Also, you want to say something? Or?
Yes, sir. We've been doing the Google search, and the American Planning Association has a nearly 800-page document where they have collected most of the rules and regulations, and we're currently reviewing that. So hopefully we'll have a good document for you to review.
So 6 months seems to be a decent.
Shooting for May.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. I would also, I see Mr. Gallion, you're in the audience, and you might pay attention or be engaged, or feel free to weigh in on this through Dale's group as development happens. Yeah. So you're aware that this was kind of going on? Okay. Thank you. All right. Appreciate it.
Very good. I don't see any other comments. I appreciate the staff. I appreciate the commissioners listening to this during the staff meeting. So at this time, I'd like to move that we approve the resolution imposing a 6-month moratorium. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. To any discussion? Seeing none. Excuse me, Madam Clerk, call a roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
And thank you, Justin, Planning Department, MAPD, the building construction, everyone that's going to be involved in this has got a big job ahead of them. I appreciate it. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item G, discussion relating to the county manager hiring process.
Thank you. Mr. Poon.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I asked that this item be put on the County Commission agenda because I'd been approached by a couple of individual commissioners that have asked to begin talking about the process of hiring our next county manager. And as I've discussed with some of you, and as I can explain to the public, you know, we're entitled to go into an executive session and discuss individuals, employees that work for the county. We're entitled to go into executive session to talk about candidates for a job with Sedgwick County. But the process of selecting a county manager is something that needs to be discussed and open, and the public needs to be aware of that process. So this morning we're going to talk about the process that we're going to use in selecting a county manager and the process that was used before for the previous county manager. Approximately 3.5 years ago, we hired the former county manager, and with the help of our Human Resources Director, Sheena Smuts, and with an assist from our Purchasing Director, Joe Thomas, we've been able to go back and look at some of the data we had from that process. In the previous search, it was decided to use an executive search agency or a headhunter. We went out for proposals in 2014, and the proposals at that time, and I believe we received 14, ranged from around $16,000 to about $35,000. And that didn't include the other expenses that these search firms would have. We ended up selecting the proposal from NP&S, doing business as Renee Narlock. Her proposal at the time was $16,500, and she estimated expenses of $7,500, and I believe we ended up using the entire amount and paying about $24,000 for that search firm at that time. In discussing this with our HR director, we believe that if we again engage a headhunter, we're probably looking at around $30,000, $40,000 for up to $40,000 for both the firm and the expenses entailed with that. Another option this commission has, if they want, would be to limit the search, use our employment website, HRE Partners. There would be no cost involved with doing a search in that manner, but to probably get the exposure that we would need to hire a candidate for this kind of a position, we'd probably still want to have some advertising in professional journals or regional newspapers to get the word out to as many candidates as possible so that we'd have a good pool of candidates. From a timing perspective, the last time we went for a search, and I was actually interim county counselor at that time as well, primarily just engaged with the legal aspects of the search. But at that particular time, we went out for proposals on November 21st of 2014. We ended up selecting Renee Narlock in, I believe it was early February of 2015. The interviews did not occur until mid-August 2015. I'm sure the budget process had something to do with that. In mid-August of 2017, we ended up drafting a contract with the former county manager, and that was signed on and approved by this commission on September 2nd, 2015, and the start date was November 15th, 2015. So you can see that using that process from beginning to end was just about 6 days shy of 1 year. In the previous search, the county used 2 different separate committees to interview candidates along with county commission interviews. We had what was called a business, civic, community leader panel and then a county management panel. The county management panel at the time consisted of our county clerk, the sheriff, public works director, our CFO at the time, communications director at the time, human resource director at the time, CIO, chief information officer, and our public safety director. And they interviewed all of the individual candidates. We also had the business, as I mentioned, business, civic, community leaders interview panel, and this was made up of some very significant individuals from our community, which included the chairman, Joe Johnson, who represented the Wichita Independent Business Association, Wes Gallion, who was president of the Wichita Area Builders Association, Jeff Fleur, president of the Greater Wichita Area Partnership, Colin McKinney, chairman of Nonprofit Chamber of Services, Kenya Cox, president of the Wichita chapter of the NAACP, Jeff Longwell, mayor of the city of Wichita, and Jennifer Basinger, coordinator Coalition for a Better Wichita. Those 7 members were on the business, civic, and community leader panel, which was moderated and assisted by Ron Holt, who was the interim county manager at the time. So, in summary, that was the process that's used before. I've given you a little bit of an idea of processes that can be used. And just in summary, I'll now turn this over to the Mr. Chairman and the board to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Papoon. Before I open it up to the public to see if they have any comments, are there any questions of Mr. Papoon from the bench? I see no questions. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the public. If any one member of the public would like to speak, please approach the podium and state your name for the record. Morning, Wes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Before I get started with my remarks, I want to welcome Mr. Howell back to the bench as a result of his reelection. Mr. Meitzner, come over to the good side. Just kidding. And Lacey, it's good to have you on the Commission. I'm here this morning to speak to you a little bit impromptu, but I've been watching what has been taking place and listening to comments and what have you about the process of hiring a county manager. More than any other organization in the city, I think it's fair to say that for the last 3 decades plus, we have been involved in virtually every level of local government, whether it's city, county, both Wichita, Sedgwick County, surrounding counties, small cities, and we've had the good fortune of being asked numerous times to sit in on screening committees, review committees, and what have you, to look at candidates that had applied and were being selected and ultimately hired for key positions. I think it's fair to say that given the interaction we have had with individuals in key positions and the way the person's worked in terms of their responsiveness, their willingness to come to the table when there was an issue or concern and deal with it, looking for solutions rather than drawing the line and say, well, we don't do it that way and causing conflict, you're not going to be able to beat Tom Stoltz. I would evidence that by the effort he put in when he was hired early on to handle the management of the consolidation of the Code Enforcement Department of the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County. Some of you may or may not know, we've focused on trying to get that accomplished for 25 years. And I think it's fair to say the economy was a big reason it got accomplished the way it was, because we were looking for efficiencies. We were looking for the development of an attitude toward delivering world-class service, not only to us in the industry, but people in the community. And if anyone even thinks for a moment that was a simple task, you'd be mistaken. There were strong feelings on both sides of the street in terms of how that structure ought to be put together, who ought to be in charge of what. And there were numerous people that were involved that didn't want to see it happen. But I didn't know Tom Stoltz up to that point. I met him, and we worked together. And I can tell you without exception that it would not have happened, and it would not be the smooth organization running like it is today with Tom present. It's been my opportunity when I've sit in on these committees and that we're reviewing and selecting people over the years. There's a lot of things you look for in an individual. And I would say that when you lay them all down, Tom comes out the top of the heap. He's straightforward. He's concerned about doing the right thing. He's honest. He's transparent. He doesn't take sides. He deals on a fact basis when we're making decisions. And when he in his capacity here at the county and when he was in charge of the code enforcement operation, he was in touch with our group and other groups, allied groups, to the degree that he would be able to sense if there were concerns that we might have and things were happening that should not necessarily be happening the way they were, and he would bring the issue to us. And I think that's the kind of management you want. People that are open to the public. Don't sit back and wait for things to occur and then have to deal with them with all that goes with doing that sort of thing. So you might find somebody with more stuff on their resume, but you won't find anybody any more qualified than that man right there. And Tom and I aren't close friends or anything else. He has facts. I share experiences. I share opinions because I don't have any facts. So you can't ask me any questions about it. I just want you to know that. But I would encourage you to move forward as quickly as possible. I have members every day out of the 1,000 members that come from 635 companies say, when is the county going to hire a manager, and is it going to be Stoltz? Because the interaction they've had with him, I think in their mind, justifies him being the one. The county needs stability. He can bring it. and we'd love to work with him and you on whatever is important to you, but that's why I'm here today.
Wes, thank you very much for being here. Let me see if they've got any questions for you before you go away. Commissioner Meitzner may have a question for you.
Well, just as a quick follow-up, Wes, thanks for sharing your experience and and appreciate your recommendation. So, I think my question is more for Mike as a follow-up from Wes's comment. So, the process as of now you described the headhunter process, cost, potentially up to a year, assuming it could be less than that. And then you also discussed an internal, a limited search on the website with minimal advertisement. So another option would be to help evaluate what we have currently as our acting county manager and discussion and consideration of that. That's a process as well, one of the options.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, you could even have that discussion in executive session, but you can have it in open session as well. But that's a fair discussion from this agenda item.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying the options.
Very good. As long as we've got Wes here, before I bring up the next speaker, you've got a home show. You might as well put a plug in for it.
Nice. I would love to put a plug in for the home show. We're going to open the home show this Thursday, the 7th, at 1 o'clock. It'll run till 8 in the evening. Friday and Saturday will be 10 until 8, and Sunday will be 10 until 5. This is the 65th year for the home show. It was started actually kind of in a tent-type setting years ago when some builders built some model homes and wanted to decorate them and try to do something to merchandise them and get the public to come to them, and did. And they set up a little tent so that suppliers of products could show other products other than what they had put in these homes, and it caught fire. So they've built this show over time from a small beginning to now we run 240 to around 260 companies a year that take up all the space in Expo Hall and the Convention Hall. It is a consumer show. They're in charge when they come to the show. And it's grown to the point, because of the quality of the exhibits and the number of the exhibits and the way the show is managed and done, it's viewed now as a regional show, and because of that. And we pull exhibitors in not only from Wichita and Sedgwick County and surrounding areas, but we have them come in from Oklahoma, Denver. Got a call the other day from someone from New York that was wanting to come in and potentially display something. And it is sold out as far as the number of exhibitors go. And I think it's almost become a community event. So we encourage people to come down and see what's new, which a lot of stuff is because of the R&D that goes on in product development anymore. And the other thing we have is county services and city services there that can answer questions of people that may live in the county or the country and want some answers to certain things. And we're doing a number of seminars to help people make decisions, learn about products, learn about services, make good decisions when they decide to do something, so that they know they're making a good decision and the money they're spending, they're not overspending to get for the benefit they want to get out of it. So I'd love to have you there. A VIP night. I think most of you are coming. Thursday evening starts 4:30. We'd welcome you there.
Just a moment, because Commissioner O'Donnell has his light on, so I don't.
I do, but it's not really a question, Wes. So you don't have to.
You're not canceling, are you?
But
you can't cancel.
So, but what I did want to say is that your organization is dedicated to good government.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have been there for over 30 years now in your current capacity, but your board are people that aren't even necessarily home builders as well. They're community leaders and servants that care about good government. You talk about this. I know you're telling the truth, because I've heard from some of key people in your organization about Tom's leadership at MABCD, because that wouldn't have happened without the push from WABA telling the city and the county that this is good for our entire community to get this. It saved us money and it streamlined the process. And it's a model as we are going to continue to look for ways to consolidate, save taxpayers money, and make government more efficient. That's a model, and Tom was obviously there from the very beginning, and it couldn't have got done if you didn't hire the right person. So I understand what you're saying, and I just want to reiterate that your organization, you really don't have a dog in the fight other than you want us to hire somebody that's competent. But your experience has led you to believe, because over 30 years you've known quite a few city managers, county managers, commissioners, council members, and I think that brings a lot to the organization, just your own intellectual history with this, that you know what it looked for.
appreciate that. I think everyone in the public and both the private sector want good management. They want transparency in government. They want responsive government. They want solutions to problems, not continued discussion about problems. And I think Tom can help bring that to the top.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Wes. See you Thursday.
Well, Wes, thank you very much for being here. I know you've got a busy day trying to get ready for the home show. And by the way, the only downside I see of the home show is it costs me a lot of money every time I bring my wife. So.
Well, we're looking to taking more of it this time.
Thank you very much. Okay, Lonnie, you're up.
Lonnie Wright, 1721 South Lulu. And I completely agree with Mr. Gallian's comments about the assessment and value of Tom Stoltz. We got to know him as we consolidated our city and county inspection departments, and his leadership and ability to identify problems before they come and being able to resolve them was great. He has a great balance in his valuation of what government should and should not do in our lives and how government can provide just what's needed but be effective. So I don't think there's any way we could possibly do better than having Tom Stoltz as the county manager. I really deeply appreciate him, and I think he's a fair man and would do us a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you for your talk. Is anyone else in the audience that wish to speak? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the bench. I'll start out a couple things. First of all, I actually had communications put out an email on Monday and asked our staff, who we truly want to make sure that everyone understands is we truly value our staff and their opinions. And so I said, hey, all of our commissioners have an open door or open email. Send us your thoughts. Well, it wouldn't have been too long ago, I don't think I'd have received any emails back because I think that there was some fear in the organization to give us true feelings of what they really truly believed in. But instead, I got, and I'm certain that other commissioners received, a flurry of emails, which really did impress me because it means that the entire atmosphere in Sedgwick County has changed to one of trust, that they trusted that we would listen to what they had to say and there wouldn't be any retribution based on what they felt. Because I was asking for their true feelings and I was getting their true feelings back. And I can't speak for the other commissioners because I'm not sure what they saw in the emails. But what I saw was 100% of the emails told me that we've already got the person in place. Let's move forward in Sedgwick County, make the decision sooner rather than later, give us stability, do this transparently, which we're doing right now. But we have the person that we need to lead Sedgwick County into the future. And I sincerely appreciate our staff feeling comfortable enough to be able to tell us that directly. The other thing is I spoke to a number of people in the public community. Mr. Papoon mentioned the civilian, I call it civilian, I'm sorry, the business and community that addressed the issue 3 years ago. And so I called Joe Johnson because he's a good friend of mine. He served with me on the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission for a number of years, so I know him very well. And he was the chairman of the committee that was interviewing the candidates that were up 3 years ago. And what Joe told me is he said 3 years ago the committee unanimously chose as the #1 candidate as Tom Stoltz. And I said, is there any change in your feeling since then? He said, absolutely not. He still believes that Tom Stoltz is the #1 candidate for the county manager. Other folks that I've talked to around the community have echoed the exact same comments. So I have to believe what our staff says. I have to believe what the business community tells me. I have had an opportunity over the past 2 years of actually watching him as he moved forward with our county, and I've watched him especially during the last couple months with his title with the interim on the front of it. And what I've seen is that we have now poured oil on the water. Things are it's a different atmosphere, in my belief, in Sedgwick County as a result of his leadership. So I have to believe exactly what the staff is telling me. I have to believe exactly what the business community is telling me, and every single one of them, without an exception, not a single exception, has told me that this is the direction we need to go. So in my opinion, that is the direction that we need to go in the future. So I'd value any other comments from any of the other commissioners to see what their thoughts are. Commissioner Cruz.
Tom, don't you just love us talking about you? I love it. I just want to say that as a young woman who is new to all of this, who could I'm the same age as your children, he has treated me with the utmost respect. Okay, listen, Linda. He has treated me with the utmost respect, and there have been some people who haven't. So I really appreciate how you treat me as an adult, you treat me as a commissioner. You have been, just from day one, ever since the election, the transition period, I've been fortunate to have somebody who really does respect me and wants to see me succeed. I'm really not interested in spending tax dollars to find somebody that we already have right in front of us, because my fear is it will take us a long time, and what happens in that process? Do we lose Tom? Do we lose other folks that might not want to stay because we have decided not to go with the person we already have? I mean, he has more than 30 years experience. And, you know, from what I've heard, speaking with staff and other community members, we already had the guy 3 years ago. And so we shouldn't even be having this conversation because he should already be there. So in my own personal opinion, I feel like he brings stability and a sense of calm, which is what we need as an organization. And I will stop talking about you, Tom, right in front of your face, because I believe that, you know, I really appreciate what you've done, and I know that you'll do a great job.
Thank you. Any other commissioners wish to speak? Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Chairman. Lacey, you spoke well, and if I was looking at this from a broader perspective, the time involved to do something, the expense involved to the taxpayers to do something that may be just evidently in front of us, really approaches me as something that I think it'd be should be avoided, and it would show a responsible commission. And then obviously the stability of the staff and the quality of what Mr. Stoltz has done in the interim, and I became friends with Tom not because we wanted to be friends, but I worked with him when he was at the city and the police department, and so we had occasions to work closely on some things, and then it migrated, and so I have a tremendous professional respect for Tom. And it's grown into a friendship, as many things would do in business and who you work with. So I based on that feeling, and I've got many comments I could say. The feedback from the public, as Chairman has said, and the feedback from my connections within the community have been. I was waiting to hear one to say let's pause, let's go another way. Let's look at all the options. It's been it's one of those things when it's obvious. You should move when it's obvious. And so with that, I've kind of written up even a motion to take a next step. I don't know if we're ready to hear a motion, but I'd be glad to present a motion. But I'd first like to make sure, Mike, or this discussion has been okay, and the comments and.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as Tom's okay. He's
well, we don't care about Tom's feelings right now.
Discussing personnel matters in public.
This isn't personal. This is business.
No, it's certainly okay.
Okay, so I don't see anything. I've written a motion here, and please correct if it's not apparent. It's really a motion of an intent to pursue a next step, which would be a motion to direct the county councilor to enter in negotiations with Mr. Stoltz and bring back a contract to the commission for consideration of approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been, let me just say, I appreciate the comments of Wes Gallion. It looks like he may be left, but Lonnie as well. Thank you for speaking up. And I just want to say, as I've gotten to know Mr. Stoltz, you have done a tremendous job. And so I want to start off with saying I appreciate your leadership and your ability to get things done and somehow find a way to make 5 very different people happy, which is hard to do. So I want to say I have great confidence in you, but I do want to reflect on a couple of things. Number one, hiring a manager is probably the most important thing we have to do besides pass a budget. It has a tremendous responsibility, and this really should not be a political thing. Bill Buchanan, as I said before, served with over 20 county commissioners during his 24 years at the county. People of all political ideologies, he worked with them very, very well, and I supported Bill Buchanan while he was here. I just looked it up. He did announce his retirement plans in November of 2014. I don't think we really got serious about trying to find a process to move forward until we had the new commission seated in 2015. And I was part of that process. And I just want to say it was what I liked about the process is that it was open and transparent and competitive. We actually looked it up. I received, I think, 85 applications. Many of them were absolutely not qualified. There were about, I would say, 11 that were that caught our attention. Actually, take that back. There was 10 that caught our attention. 7 of those were brought to us by Mr. Arlock, and then we reviewed all the rejections, and we found 3 that we wanted to bring forward as well. So we started out with roughly 10 out of the 85 we thought actually had qualifications that we should take a look at them. And we followed a process where we had telephone interviews, we had group interviews, both with the commission as well as other directors and staff across the organization, as well as outside organizations. We brought some of them in for community tours and face-to-face meetings, both with the community as well as those other groups and the commissioners. We had individual interviews. I think I had 2 individual interviews with numerous candidates. I would tell you that, Mr. Stoltz, you were one of those candidates, and you did a great job, and so I'm very familiar with your experience and education. In fact, I've got it right in front of me, and I could read it if anybody wanted to know what that was. I'd be glad to share that. But nevertheless, what I liked about the process was it was open and transparent and competitive, and anybody in the community that wanted to, or in the nation for that matter, that wanted to get our attention and make an effort to be recognized in that process had the opportunity to do that. So one of my concerns is I want to be supportive of Mr. Stoltz, assuming that's where we're headed, but I also have a concern that the public perception is that this is predetermined and we're not open to other folks. I didn't understand why I was meeting with 2 people, but 2 people have contacted me in the community that said they were interested in this position after I found out what they were wanting. Doesn't mean that, and I cautioned them. I said really it would be inappropriate for me to have this conversation, so I shut those off. But I'm aware there are other people out there that want to get our attention, and to the extent we would like to be open and fair and and transparent, I have some concerns about just moving in this one direction. With respect to the $30,000 to $40,000, you said we spent $24,000 this last time. And it did take quite a long time, but again, I don't know when we actually got started with the actual process of trying to locate. I'm not sure when the 14 bids were received, for example, and how long that process took. But I have in front of me reports from that organization, and we started the process of interviewing in June of 2015. I don't know that we ought to go through that same process. I don't mind necessarily an HRE partners process. I don't know what the cost for advertising would be. I think it'd be fairly minimal, and it wouldn't necessarily take 6 months. It might take 30 days. So I guess in an effort to say we ought to be open and transparent, I would prefer to see us post this. Again, I would expect that Tom Stoltz would be probably one of the top candidates, if not the one we would settle on, only because I know him and he's obviously the most experienced in the position. But I just think we need to, my opinion is we need to be open to learning what we don't know. That's never wrong, to take our time and be thoughtful and analytical and open this up to other things we don't know. And as much as I would love to settle this quickly, it has been, I believe, 24 days we've had 2 commissioners on the bench for 24, I should say, that have been in their offices for 24 days since the 13th of January thus far. We've had a lot of turmoil. There's been a lot of things getting through the holidays and letting the dust settle, that type of thing. So it has been probably not the best month necessarily to get to know exactly how everything's working. But I don't want to be in such a hurry that we don't respect the process. I like to be process driven, if possible. So to the extent that the motion is made, I want to support Mr. Stoltz as much as possible going forward. But I just want to register my concerns that we are moving in a way that is not as open and transparent as some of the people in the community might like us to be. I would like us to give them an opportunity, and more than likely, I would assume that Tom would be probably a very top contender for that position. But I think we ought to be open to what we don't know. And so with that, I guess that's all my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So since we've been talking about this after an executive session last week, I've also reached out to people that were on the external committee. I know you have as well. You just said it. And one thing that was startling and striking to me is that when they met, and this would have been the summer to fall of 2015, so a little over 3 years ago, not only was Tom Stoltz the first choice of the committee, but he was the first choice of every single member as recorded by their own minutes. Is that what you understand as well, Mr. Chair? And our past county manager came in 4th place out of the 4 candidates. Is that correct, Mr. Chair? Right. I mean, that's just startling to me that every single member, in a good way, startling in a good way, that every single member selected Mr. Stoltz to be their top choice. And then our former county manager came in 4th out of 4. So I think we have had a open, transparent process, both internally and externally, in the not too distant past, that would make me comfortable with moving forward to install Tom Stoltz as manager for Sedgwick County. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you. Just 2 points of clarification. The outside group you're referring to was 7 community leaders, and I have the data right here if you want to. I have it. And he's correct. Tom Stoltz was the top choice of these 7 people. That is true. We did have other groups, so it was a very thoughtful, methodical process. Again, I think I spent, I would say, somewhere between 8 and 10 hours interviewing our former county manager. And if you add up the other interviews, it was a very, very lengthy process. We did not do this lightly. It was a very serious matter, and we spent a lot of time at this. And I took this into consideration, although I didn't have names. These are all anonymous. So that's, except for there's one name on one of them, but they're basically anonymous. I don't know who these people are. I don't know. I can't ask follow-up questions. And that was a little bit frustrating at that time. But nevertheless, there were other groups that came to different conclusions. And as politics is this way, you take in all the data and you make the very best decision that you can. It wasn't like we had unanimous opinion everywhere. In fact, I would tell you that among the commissioners, there was 3 commissioners, one of those not being Carl Peter John, that selected our former manager as their first choice. And I believe it was unanimous at the end, there was a 5-0 vote, but one of the commissioners, I guess, registered an objection that he didn't care for the process we followed. Furthermore, we were actually criticized by the media and the public for not being transparent and not being open to their satisfaction, despite the fact we actually had a fairly good process to get to that point. And finally, with respect to the chairman's note out to staff, I have one question. Was this, and I'll let you answer this in just a moment, but my first question is, was this written to all of our employees? Did they all receive this? I assume they did. We have just under 3,000 employees altogether. I would make a note, you mentioned we had a flurry of responses. I received 2 responses on Monday and 5 responses on Tuesday. Altogether, 6 directors responded to that, and they were all specifically naming Tom Stoltz as their excellent choice. And again, I wanted to make that clear. And again, I don't disagree with what they said. I think he is an excellent choice, but I don't know if I call that a flurry out of 3,000 employees. And finally, I just want to make sure this is clear. This can't be about friendship. We sometimes get accused of doing things for the wrong reasons. I would like to make sure that people understand that we want to do this because of qualifications and experience. Again, Tom Stoltz has got tremendous qualifications and experience. And I'm not against Tom in any way. I love you, Tom. You're a great guy, okay? But I just want to say that we want to be open to what we don't know. And this is, we have to make our choice based on everything, not just on a personal relationship. And so, all right, I think I've said too much already. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
I just want to say that any other organization I've ever been at, we've always looked to hire from within because it makes the most sense. When you have somebody already qualified right in front of your face, why wouldn't you hire that person? We have too much to do as a commission. We need to move forward. And dragging this out, I'm not sure it's genuine, helpful, or transparent to have a search when it's clear that we have a top candidate from a recent search with a proven track record and the support of the community and staff.
Thank you. Well, I'll just make a couple concluding comments before I call for the motion. But first of all, the email I sent out earlier this week did go to every single employee. But by the same token, a lot of those employees, those 3,000 employees you mentioned, don't work with Tom Stoltz every single day. The responses you got back were from people that work with Tom Stoltz every single day, and they know him best. The other comment that you made earlier was that we got 2 commissioners that's only got a couple days on the bench. Well, I don't think that that's even close to accurate because, first of all, Commissioner Cruz attended meetings for the last 6 months and has had an opportunity to see Tom Stoltz in action for an extended period of time. Commissioner Meitzner has had an opportunity at the city to know Tom Stoltz both at the city and in the county. So the fact that they've only been on the bench a couple days doesn't make their vote any less valid by any means. The fact is that we've got to see Tom Stoltz in action, and especially in action in a very trying times. He's a known entity. Others may look very good on paper, but we can end up with someone that is not a leader. Just because they look good on paper doesn't mean that they're what we need. Right now, Sedgwick County needs stability. That's the most important thing that we need in this county, and Tom Stoltz brings stability to us. I mentioned yesterday in our staff meeting that I'm reading this book called Multipliers, and there are certain leaders that are multipliers. Tom Stoltz is a multiplier. So therefore, I am going to place my vote as approving the motion that's already been generated. Commissioner Howell.
Again, just to be absolutely clear, I'll support the motion. I just wanted to be on record of saying I have some concerns. That's fine. Clearly, the majority of this commission wants to go in the other direction. I want to support Tom Stoltz, and so I'll support the motion as well. But I did not say a couple of days. I did say 24 days. And my point is not that these people should be disrespected. That's not meant to be a negative comment. It's meant to say that there's a different relationship when you work this closely with the manager. It's much different being here as a commissioner than simply sitting in the audience and having him in the room. This is a much different relationship. I'm not trying to be negative or critical of anybody, but we have a different relationship with our manager when you actually sit in the seat and have an office up on this floor. It is a different relationship. And so I was just stating a fact. It was 24 days, not a couple of days. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I see no other comments. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you. Mr. Papoon, you have a big job ahead of you. We expect a report next meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item H, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts regular meeting on January 31st, 2019.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, sir, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director. The regular meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts on January 31st results in 6 items that we'd like to present to you. Our first one is the multifunction copiers, printers, equipment, accessories, and supplies for various county departments. This recommendation is to establish a contract with Conica Minolta Business Solutions based on the Staples, Minnesota Sourcewell contract, and that's 083116 KON. This contract's good through April 1st, 2019, and has a 1-year option to renew. Item number 2 is a second multifunction copier, printer, equipment, accessory, and supply recommendation for various departments. And this recommendation is to establish a contract with Canon Solutions America, and it's based on the DuPage County, Illinois National IPA contract, which is FIR 025118, and this is good through September 30th, 2023. Our third item is maintenance and support for a computer-aided dispatch system, which is emergency communications, and this recommendation is to accept the quote from Northrop Grumman Systems Corporation, and this is in the amount of $328,191. Item number 4, on-base maintenance and support for information technology and support services, and this recommendation is to accept the quote from Conica Minolta Business Solutions, and this is in the amount of $177,325.96. Item number 5 is the Internet Circuit from Information Technology and Support Services for 2716 West Central, Division of Health. The recommendation is to accept the quote from Cox Business Services at the rates listed for a 36-month period. And our final item is item 6, Cable Services for Information Technology and Support Services. And this recommendation is to accept the quote from Cox Business Services at the rates listed, and this is also for a 36-month term. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval of all 6 items.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I don't have any questions, but I move that we approve the recommendations of the Board of Bids and Contracts.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? I have one question. The Cox was sole source. Is there a good reason why we went sole source on Cox rather than putting that out for bid?
My understanding, and Mr. Joe Courier can verify this, is that it would be more cost effective to go with Cox as opposed to any other carrier or service. Is that correct? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
But do you know that by going sole source? Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner. Joe Courier, IT Infrastructure Director. Back when Cox did the digital conversion, we had analog throughout the courthouse and everywhere else. When they did the digital conversion, we looked at other options with DirecTV, Dish Network, or antenna installations. This was the best course of action for the county at the time. And reviewing those costs again for Dish Networks and those as we brought this forward, the same findings were still accurate.
Okay, but like AT&T can run over Ethernet. We got Ethernet all through the building. You can't run that off of our Ethernet?
I haven't looked at that recently, sir, but they the services provided are significantly reduced in price compared to anything we've seen other places.
But when the infrastructure allows it, shouldn't we go out and take a look and see if that's not an option?
How do we do that with purchasing?
As purchasing, we normally look to our departments as our subject matter experts, and I believe, and the term sole source, it's also correct to say single source. But yeah, there are other options, but we have deferred to Mr. Courier's and the ITSS evaluation.
If we approve this, how long is it approved for?
This is for a 36-month period.
So that precludes us from going out and looking to see if there's other opportunities for 36 months?
We can, my understanding is we can cancel outlets in different areas if we find that a building's closing, or if we're moving out of the place and have other services elsewhere. We can cancel the outlets, and this is a cost-saving measure for us at this point to move forward with it.
Okay, well, I can approve it if you go out and look. That my concern is the sole source. If the infrastructure that we've got in place handles someone else and they can do it cheaper, I don't know why we wouldn't look at it.
I would be happy to take it back and look at AT&T and talk to them. I can tell you that from looking at, I did write some notes down for Dish and DirecTV. They were $29.99 a month as opposed to the $10 per month that we're looking at here.
Okay. Well, I just think we ought to look at it rather than going sole source. I try and shy away from sole source whenever I can. Okay. So I make a motion that we approve the report of bids and contracts with the stipulation they go back out and take a look at the sole source portion of it. Do I have a second?
Second.
I was just going to ask you, just wanted me to rescind my...
Say that again.
Yeah, you need to...
If I should just rescind my motion.
Oh, is that your motion?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Originally. Yeah.
Okay. So I apologize. He already had a motion. Very
Yeah.
good.
So I would move to rescind my motion.
Okay. So we have an alternate motion actually in place.
So you can make a substitute, sure.
Yeah. All right. So I'd like to have a substitute motion then that we approve it, but with stipulation that you take a look at the sole source.
Second.
Okay. Good. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Commissioner.
it's been a long meeting. I missed that motion. I'm sorry. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Interim County Manager Tom Stolz. Recommend you approve consent items I through U this morning.
Move to approve India through uniform.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Legislative issues.
Mr. Papoon.
Yes, excuse me. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, we're continuing to work with our contract lobbyist, Jason Watkins, on several matters that are important in Sedgwick County. We're still in the process of getting two bills out of the revisor's office, one dealing with nuisance abatement, the other dealing with voting at any polling place. Yesterday, we had two representatives from Sedgwick County testifying against House Bill 2050, which was a bill which would put considerable stress on our jail population and essentially an unfunded mandate. Sheriff Easter was up testifying, and Glenda Martins, our Director of Corrections, testified. Talking to Glenda this morning, she said that she thought the hearing went very well. There was only one proponent for the legislation, and all the others were opponents. The Election Commissioner is reviewing some election bills, and we're working with our regional partners and our lobbyist on behavioral health initiatives, which are very important in Sedgwick County as well. So.
Thank you, Mr. Papoon. Any questions on the legislative issues from anyone? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, next item.
Other.
Does any commissioner have anything for other? Seeing nothing, next item. We have no executive session today. Any commissioners have anything else that needs to come before the board? Before we adjourn, I want to thank the commissioners for a lot went on today. Truly, we had a lot of major issues, and I appreciate all the hard work of each of the commissioners, and I sincerely appreciate the hard work of the staff bringing all of these issues to us to be able to work today. But with that, I see nothing else. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Production and broadcast costs for Sedgwick County Commission meetings have been underwritten by Sedgwick County. KPTS welcomes comments from the public on its broadcast of the County Commission meetings. Viewers are invited to write to County Commission Broadcast, KPTS, 320 West 21st Street North, Wichita, Kansas, 67203. You're watching KPTS, Hutchinson, Wichita, public television for South Central Kansas. We now join our regularly scheduled program, already in progress.
And it sort of is. People are familiar with the fact that you lose interest in everything. It seems like all the color goes out of your life. You don't want to do anything. And